Okay, mic test. Hope it's on. Are we good? If you actually look at all of the AI systems out there, they are getting trained on what we refer to as the codified truth in the organization, which is all of your brand guidelines, your brand kits, and so on and so forth. And it turns out that that represents only 20% of what the enterprise knowledge is. What you need is 100% of that context, which comes from what we refer to as the uncodified knowledge, right? So this is the decision traces, the approvals, the rejections, the annotations, the comments, the reviews, the approvals, and all of those things that are happening by your marketers and your creatives. So what Adobe Brand Intelligence does is it actually, trains on the 100% of this information. And by doing that, it's able to actually deliver certain skills, that are pretty transformative when it comes to content production. The first one is around instruct to assemble, where you can bring real nuanced information around how your brand operates in terms of content production. The second one, it's actually can, as part of your pre-production pipeline, do validation at scale. So all of those intricate things that your brand team, your content production team cares about, it can actually enforce that. And finally, it has this performance prediction scale where, based on the engagement of specific audience or a customer segment, it leverages synthetic audience to actually estimate that. It's a combination of all of these things that it makes it really, really game-changing for the industry, and that's what I'm so excited about it. We ran a study and found that about a third of the marketers and creatives, talked about, lack of collaboration across their respective teams as a key reason for why they cannot accelerate the content supply chain. In particular, they talked about silos, the fact that, oftentimes, information is not being shared around, specific steps in the workflow as causing friction or slowing down the process. So I would say that's one where leveraging AI, you can really start to streamline the end-to-end collaboration across these different stakeholders. And then the second point I would say is the fact that our vision around the Gen Studio solution from Adobe is that it is going to be human-led and agent accelerated. So across personas in marketing as well as in creatives, each and every one is going to have one or more agents that are going to be available to them to do specific tasks, to follow through on things. You can actually assign them things that are typically mundane tasks, and they will actually take care of that and come back to you if there are any questions, or they'll come back to you when the task is done. With the Firefly Creative Production Agent, what you need to do is just give the agent the creative brief. It'll automatically analyze this creative brief and then pick an existing workflow that exists in your organization, or it'll actually go ahead and create it. And it does that by first going and looking at all of the pre-approved assets that live in your AEM assets. It also has a connection with Frame. So once the content is produced, you can actually route it for review and approval inside of Frame. And then once the approval is there, it can actually store this approved assets back into AEM. So it fundamentally transforms end-to-end, taking a creative brief and then delivering scale content. All of this is going to be on brand because it also, invokes Adobe Brand Intelligence as part of the end-to-end workflow. There are certain industries, automotive, fashion, luxury goods, high-tech manufacturing, consumer product goods, and so on and so forth, where the identity of the product needs to be preserved as part of any campaign that you're running. And so for a lot of these industries, they haven't been able to use the power of generative AI because, sometimes these models might hallucinate. But to protect their brand, they need to make sure that the identity is preserved and it's really, really precise in terms of how the product is represented. So what we are doing with the Adobe 3D digital twin solution as part of Firefly Creative Production is that we allow these brands to create a pixel perfect representation of a 3D digital twin, and then it can be actually inserted as part of the workflow or the pipeline that you're creating around scale content production. And why is this transformative? Well, it turns out that there aren't that many 3D artists that are available in the world who can actually help you take a CAD file, take a physical representation of your product, and convert it into a digital twin. And what we've done is we've actually democratized that end-to-end workflow. So you just give us your CAD file and we will be able to convert that into a digital twin. And then we take that twin and do Gen AI both on foreground as well as background in terms of creating all of the content and then sizing it, be it images or videos, using Firefly Creative Production. And that's why it's so transformative.